Professor Alistair Finch, his face etched with the topographical map of his years, ran a trembling hand over the brittle parchment. The lamp's flickering gaslight danced in the depths of his spectacles, magnifying the arcane symbols etched within. This wasn't just any map. It was a whispered legend, a cartographical heresy passed down through generations of his family, the map of Eldoria. Eldoria, the name alone conjured images of a lost civilization, a paradise swallowed by the mists of time. Others called it a myth, a romantic fable fueled by the feverish imaginations of antiquarians. But Alistair knew better. He felt the map's power, the subtle vibration resonating deep within his bones. It thrummed with a history both captivating and terrifying. He had dedicated his life to its decipherment, poring over ancient texts, enduring scorn from his peers, and sacrificing a normal existence on the altar of obsession. Now, after decades of relentless research, he believed he had finally unlocked its secrets. Eldoria wasn't just a place. It was a portal, a thin veil between realities. He'd traced the route, painstakingly matching the archaic symbols with forgotten landmarks hidden within the remote Carpathians. The entrance, according to the map, was concealed within the ruins of a forgotten monastery perched atop the treacherous Mount Negru, Black Mountain, in the local tongue. "Foolish old man," a voice hissed, a dry rasp that seemed to slither from the shadows. Alistair nearly jumped out of his skin. His housekeeper, Mrs. Petrovna, stood framed in the doorway, her face a mask of disapproval. Her gnarled hands were clasped tightly, her eyes glinting with an unsettling intensity. "Professor," she continued, her voice laced with a chilling premonition. This Eldoria, it is not for you. Some things are best left buried." Alistair scoffed, masking his unease with academic condescension. "Superstition. Mrs. Petrovna, you listen to too many old wives' tales." He knew her lineage ran deep within these mountains, steeped in folklore and whispers of ancient spirits. He respected her knowledge, even if he didn't believe in the darker aspects. "These are not tales, Professor," she said, her gaze unwavering. "The Negru is cursed. It takes those who seek its secrets. I'm not afraid of a little mountain, Mrs. Petrovna. This is the culmination of my life's work. I owe it to myself, to history, to finally unravel this mystery." He turned back to the map, dismissing her concerns. But a seed of doubt had been planted. The parchment felt colder now, the ink darker, almost sentient. The following morning, Alistair packed his equipment: ropes, pickaxes, a sturdy compass, and a journal bound in leather, ready to chronicle his discovery. He hired a local guide, a young man named Constantin, who possessed the strength and knowledge necessary to navigate the treacherous terrain. Constantin, despite his youth, possessed an unsettling stoicism. His eyes, the color of granite, seemed to hold centuries of secrets. He listened to Alistair's explanation of their quest with quiet respect, but a flicker of unease betrayed his composure. "Professor," Constantin said, his voice low and grave, "the Negru. It sleeps, but it does not forget. Many have gone up, few have come down." Alistair, emboldened by adrenaline and years of yearning, dismissed the warning. "We'll be careful, Constantin. We'll be in and out before it even notices us." The ascent began innocently enough. The morning air was crisp, the forest vibrant with life. But as they climbed higher, a palpable shift occurred. The trees grew gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air became heavy, laced with the scent of damp earth and something else, something ancient and foul. The wind howled through the peaks, whispering unintelligible words, a chorus of lamentations that seemed to claw at Alistair's sanity. Constantin grew increasingly silent, his hand constantly resting on the handle of his hunting knife. As they neared the ruins of the monastery, a thick fog descended, blanketing the mountain in an oppressive shroud. Visibility dwindled to mere feet. The world became a swirling vortex of gray, punctuated by the mournful cry of unseen birds. The monastery, when they finally reached it, was a grotesque skeleton of its former self. Crumbling walls, overgrown with moss and lichen, stood sentinel against the relentless wind. The stone was blackened, scarred by centuries of exposure and something else, something malignant. Alistair consulted the map. The entrance, according to the legend, was hidden behind a crumbling altar in the main chapel. He brushed away the debris, revealing a series of symbols carved into the stone. They were identical to those on the map, confirming his calculations. He pressed on a specific symbol, a stylized depiction of a serpent devouring its own tail. A low grinding sound echoed through the ruins. A section of the wall, hidden by a cunning mechanism, slid inward, revealing a dark, narrow passage. Alistair felt a thrill course through him, a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He had found it. He had finally found the entrance to Eldoria. He turned to Constantin, his eyes shining with triumph. "Well, Constantin, are you ready to make history?" Constantin's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. He shook his head slowly. "Professor," he whispered, his voice trembling, "I cannot go any further. This place, it feels wrong. It reeks of death." Alistair sighed, a flicker of disappointment crossing his face. "Very well. Wait for me here. I won't be long." He took a deep breath, steeling his nerves, and stepped into the darkness. The passage was claustrophobic, the air thick and heavy with the stench of decay. Alistair fumbled for his lantern, its beam cutting through the oppressive gloom. The walls were damp and slick, coated in a layer of slimy moss. He could hear the drip, drip, drip of water, each drop echoing in the oppressive silence, amplifying his unease. As he ventured deeper, the passage began to descend, spiraling downward into the heart of the mountain. The air grew colder, the darkness more profound. He felt a presence, an unseen weight pressing down on him, suffocating him. He consulted the map, confirming his path. The passage, according to the legend, led to a hidden chamber, the gateway to Eldoria. He pressed on, his heart pounding in his chest. He began to hear whispers, faint murmurs that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. They were unintelligible, a cacophony of voices speaking in a language he didn't recognize, yet somehow understood. They spoke of pain, of suffering, of unspeakable horrors. He tried to ignore them, to dismiss them as tricks of the mind, echoes of the wind. But they grew louder, more insistent, until they were a constant drone in his ears, threatening to overwhelm him. Suddenly, the passage opened into a large cavern. The air was thick with a swirling mist, obscuring the details of the space. The lantern's beam barely penetrated the gloom, revealing only fragmented glimpses of its surroundings. He could sense that the chamber was vast, its dimensions lost in the swirling fog. He could hear the sound of rushing water, a subterranean river cascading through the darkness. As he ventured further into the cavern, the mist began to dissipate, revealing the grotesque spectacle that lay before him. The walls were lined with skeletons, their bones bleached white by time and decay. They were arranged in a macabre tableau, posed as if they were still alive, engaged in some long-forgotten ritual. Some were slumped against the walls, their skulls resting on their knees. Others were chained to the stone, their arms outstretched in silent supplication. Alistair felt a wave of nausea wash over him. He had stumbled upon a charnel house, a testament to some unspeakable tragedy. In the center of the cavern stood a massive stone altar, stained dark with what he could only assume was blood. Above the altar, suspended from the ceiling by thick chains, hung a grotesque effigy, a human figure carved from bone and wrapped in rotting cloth. Its eyes were hollow sockets, staring blankly into the void. Its mouth was open in a silent scream. Alistair recognized the effigy. It was a representation of the Guardian, a monstrous entity said to protect the gateway to Eldoria. He consulted the map, his hands trembling. According to the legend, the key to unlocking the gateway was hidden within the effigy itself. He approached the altar, his heart pounding in his chest. As he drew closer, he felt a wave of malevolence wash over him, a palpable sense of dread that threatened to crush him. The air crackled with energy, and the whispers grew louder, coalescing into a unified chorus of pain and suffering. He reached out and touched the effigy. Its bone was cold and smooth, like polished marble. As he touched it, a jolt of electricity shot through his body, throwing him backward. He lay on the ground, gasping for breath, his body convulsing. The whispers intensified, swirling around him like a vortex, threatening to consume him. He looked up at the effigy. Its hollow eyes seemed to glow with an inner light, and its silent scream seemed to grow louder, echoing in his mind. He realized that he had made a mistake. He had underestimated the power of this place. He had awakened something that should have remained dormant. Summoning his courage, Alistair rose to his feet. He couldn't turn back now. He had come too far. He had to see this through. He approached the effigy again, this time with greater caution. He ran his hands over its surface, searching for a hidden mechanism. He found a small indentation on its chest, shaped like a serpent. He remembered the symbol on the wall in the monastery. He took out his journal and sketched the symbol, then carefully pressed it into the indentation. A click echoed through the cavern. The effigy shuddered, and its mouth opened wider, revealing a small, tarnished key. Alistair grabbed the key, his fingers trembling. He recognized it from the map. It was the key to the gateway to Eldoria. He looked around the cavern, searching for the gateway. He found it hidden behind the altar, concealed by a curtain of thick vines. He pulled back the vines, revealing a shimmering portal, a swirling vortex of colors that seemed to defy the laws of physics. It pulsed with energy, beckoning him to enter. He hesitated for a moment, his mind reeling. He knew that crossing this threshold would change him forever. He would be entering a realm beyond human comprehension, a place where the rules of reality didn't apply. But the allure was too strong to resist. The promise of Eldoria, the lure of the unknown, pulled him forward like a magnet. He took a deep breath and stepped into the portal. He felt a sensation of weightlessness, as if he were falling through an endless void. Colors swirled around him, a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. He could hear the whispers, amplified 1,000-fold, a cacophony of voices that threatened to shatter his sanity. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the sensation stopped. He found himself standing in a place unlike anything he had ever seen. He was in a forest, but it was a forest unlike any on earth. The trees were tall and slender, their branches reaching up to the sky like supplicating arms. Their leaves were a shimmering silver, reflecting the light of the sun. The air was warm and humid, filled with the scent of exotic flowers. Strange birds sang in the trees, their songs unlike anything he had ever heard. He looked around in awe, his mind struggling to comprehend the reality of what he was seeing. He had entered Eldoria, but his wonder was quickly replaced by a sense of unease. There was something unsettling about this place, something unnatural. The beauty was too perfect, too pristine. It felt sterile, devoid of true life. As he ventured deeper into the forest, he began to notice strange things. The trees were perfectly symmetrical, their branches arranged in geometric patterns. The flowers were all the same color, the same size. The birds sang the same song, over and over again. It was as if the entire forest was a meticulously crafted illusion, a stage set designed to deceive the senses. He consulted the map. According to the legend, the path to the heart of Eldoria was guarded by a series of trials, tests designed to weed out the unworthy. He followed the path indicated on the map, navigating through the labyrinthine forest. He encountered strange creatures, beings of pure energy that shimmered and pulsed with light. They watched him with cold, unblinking eyes, but did not attack. He came to a river, its water a shimmering silver. The map indicated that he had to cross the river to continue his journey. But the river was guarded by a creature of nightmare, a serpentine being with scales of obsidian and eyes that burned like fire. It rose from the depths of the river, its massive form blocking his path. It spoke in a voice that echoed in his mind, a voice that was both alluring and terrifying. "Turn back, mortal," it said. "This place is not for you. You do not belong here." Alistair stood his ground, his fear battling with his determination. "I have come too far to turn back now," he said, his voice trembling. "I will not be denied." The serpent laughed, a sound that echoed through the forest. "Very well," it said. "Then you must face my trial. Answer my riddle, and you may pass. Fail, and you will become food for the worms." It posed its riddle. "I have no voice, but I can tell you everything. I have no body, but I can take you anywhere. What am I?" Alistair thought for a moment, his mind racing. He knew the answer. It was the map. "The map," he said. "The map is the answer." The serpent hissed in frustration. "You are correct," it said. "You may pass, but be warned, the trials ahead are far more dangerous." The serpent sank back into the river, allowing Alistair to cross. He continued his journey, his nerves frayed, his resolve tested to its limits. After days of relentless travel, Alistair finally reached his destination, the city of Eldoria. It was a city of impossible architecture, buildings that defied gravity and logic. Towers of shimmering crystal soared into the sky, connected by bridges of pure light. Streets paved with gold wound through the city, lined with statues of beings that were both beautiful and grotesque. The city was populated by the Eldorians, beings of ethereal beauty with skin that shimmered like pearls and eyes that glowed with an inner light. They moved with a grace and elegance that was both captivating and unsettling. They greeted Alistair with polite indifference, their faces devoid of emotion. They seemed to exist in a perpetual state of serenity, untouched by the concerns and anxieties of the mortal world. Alistair was both awed and disturbed by the city and its inhabitants. He felt like an intruder, an unwelcome guest in a realm that was beyond his comprehension. He consulted the map, searching for the final destination, the heart of Eldoria, where the secrets of the lost civilization were said to be hidden. The map led him to a massive pyramid at the center of the city, a structure that towered above all others. The pyramid was constructed of a material that seemed to absorb light, making it appear to be a void in the heart of the city. He approached the pyramid, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the power emanating from it, a force that threatened to overwhelm him. The entrance to the pyramid was guarded by two Eldorians, their faces impassive, their eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity. "You may not pass," one of them said, his voice devoid of emotion. "This place is forbidden to outsiders." Alistair knew that he couldn't reason with them. He would have to find another way. He remembered a passage from an ancient text that described a secret entrance to the pyramid, a hidden tunnel that led directly to the heart of Eldoria. He consulted the map, searching for the location of the tunnel. He found it hidden behind a statue of a winged creature, a monument that was almost completely obscured by vines. He approached the statue and pulled back the vines, revealing a narrow opening in the stone. He squeezed through the opening, finding himself in a dark, musty tunnel. The tunnel descended deep into the earth, winding through a labyrinth of passages. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the walls were covered in slimy moss. Alistair pressed on, his determination fueled by the knowledge that he was close to his goal. He began to hear whispers, faint murmurs that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. They were the voices of the Eldorians, speaking in a language he didn't understand, but somehow understood. They spoke of the truth, of the secrets of Eldoria. They spoke of a paradise lost, a civilization destroyed by its own hubris. They spoke of a power that was too great for mortals to wield. As he ventured deeper into the tunnel, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They began to taunt him, to mock him, to question his motives. They told him that he was a fool, that he was wasting his time. They told him that he would never understand the secrets of Eldoria. They told him that he was doomed to fail. Alistair tried to ignore the whispers, to dismiss them as tricks of the mind. But they were relentless, eroding his confidence, chipping away at his sanity. He began to doubt himself, to wonder if he had made a mistake. He wondered if he should turn back, abandon his quest, and return to the mortal world. But the allure of Eldoria was too strong to resist. He had come too far to give up now. He had to see this through, no matter the cost. He pressed on, his resolve wavering, his mind teetering on the brink of madness. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Alistair reached the end of the tunnel. He found himself in a vast chamber, a space that seemed to stretch on forever. In the center of the chamber stood a massive crystal, pulsating with a soft, ethereal light. The crystal was the heart of Eldoria, the source of its power. Around the crystal were gathered the Eldorians, their faces impassive, their eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity. They were engaged in some sort of ritual, chanting in a language that was both beautiful and terrifying. Alistair watched in awe and horror as the Eldorians raised their arms towards the crystal, their voices rising in a crescendo of sound. The crystal began to glow brighter, its light intensifying until it filled the entire chamber. A wave of energy washed over Alistair, overwhelming his senses. He felt his mind expanding, his consciousness dissolving into the light. He began to understand everything, to see the universe in all its complexity and beauty. He understood the secrets of Eldoria, the reasons for its rise and fall. He understood the power that the Eldorians had possessed, and the reasons why they had lost it. He understood the true nature of reality, the illusion that separated the mortal world from the realm of the divine. He also understood the price of knowledge. He understood that some secrets were best left buried, that some powers were too great for mortals to wield. He understood that he had made a terrible mistake. He had opened a door that should have remained closed. He had awakened something that should have remained dormant. The Eldorians stopped chanting. They turned to face Alistair, their faces impassive, their eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity. "You have learned the truth," one of them said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Now you must pay the price." The Eldorians raised their hands towards Alistair, their fingers glowing with energy. He felt a searing pain course through his body, as if his very soul was being ripped apart. He screamed in agony, his voice echoing through the chamber. He fell to his knees, his body convulsing. He knew that he was dying. He knew that he had failed. He had sought knowledge and power, but he had found only destruction. As his life ebbed away, he saw a vision. He saw the future of the mortal world, a world consumed by chaos and darkness, a world where the secrets of Eldoria had been unleashed upon humanity. He realized that he had doomed them all. With his last breath, he whispered a prayer, a plea for forgiveness. He prayed that someone, somehow, would find a way to undo his mistake, to close the door that he had opened. Then, his eyes closed, and he passed into the darkness. Constantin waited at the entrance to the monastery, the fog clinging to him like a shroud. Hours had passed, and the sun had long since set, plunging the mountain into an impenetrable darkness. He knew something was wrong. The professor, despite his eccentricity, was a creature of habit. He wouldn't have stayed gone this long unless something terrible had happened. He fought against his fear, the whispers of his ancestors urging him to flee. But he couldn't abandon the professor. Despite his reservations, he felt a responsibility to the man, a sense of duty that ran deeper than any fear. He lit a torch, its flickering flame casting dancing shadows on the crumbling walls. He took a deep breath and entered the passage, following the path the professor had taken hours ago. The darkness was oppressive, the air thick with the stench of decay. He could hear the drip, drip, drip of water, each drop echoing in the oppressive silence, amplifying his unease. He moved slowly and cautiously, his hand resting on the handle of his hunting knife. He knew that he was walking into danger, but he had no choice. He reached the cavern, his heart pounding in his chest. The sight that greeted him was even more horrifying than he had imagined. The skeletons were still arranged in their macabre tableau, their bones gleaming in the torchlight. The effigy hung above the altar, its hollow eyes staring blankly into the void. But it was the shimmering portal that drew his attention. It pulsed with energy, beckoning him to enter. He knew that the professor had gone through it. He hesitated for a moment, his mind reeling. He knew that crossing this threshold would change him forever. He would be entering a realm beyond human comprehension, a place where the rules of reality didn't apply. But he couldn't leave the professor to face whatever horrors lay beyond the portal alone. He had to go after him. He took a deep breath and stepped into the portal. The sensation of weightlessness was disorienting, the colors swirling around him like a vortex. He could hear the whispers, amplified 1,000-fold, a cacophony of voices that threatened to shatter his sanity. He emerged into the forest, his senses overwhelmed. He could feel the unnatural energy of the place, the artificiality of its beauty. He followed the path, his instincts guiding him. He encountered the strange creatures, the beings of pure energy. He felt their cold, unblinking gaze, but they did not attack. He came to the river, and he saw the serpent, its scales of obsidian gleaming in the moonlight. It recognized him and hissed in anger. "You dare trespass in this sacred place?" It roared. "You will pay for your insolence." Constantin knew that he couldn't defeat the serpent in a direct confrontation. He had to use his wits. He remembered the professor's journal. He quickly pulled it out and opened it to the page containing the serpent's riddle. He looked at the serpent and smiled. "I know the answer to your riddle," he said. The serpent was taken aback. "Impossible!" it roared. "Only the worthy can answer my riddle." Constantin recited the answer. "The map. The map is the answer." The serpent hissed in frustration. "Very well," it said. "You may pass, but be warned, the trials ahead are far more dangerous." Constantin crossed the river and continued his journey, his resolve hardened. He would find the professor, and he would bring him back, even if it meant facing death itself. He reached the city of Eldoria, his senses reeling. He navigated through the streets, ignoring the impassive stares of the Eldorians. He found the pyramid, its dark presence radiating an oppressive power. He searched for the secret entrance, finding it hidden behind the statue of the winged creature. He squeezed through the opening and entered the tunnel, his heart pounding in his chest. He heard the whispers, mocking him, taunting him, questioning his motives. He ignored them, focusing on his goal. He reached the chamber, and he saw the heart of Eldoria, pulsating with its ethereal light. He saw the Eldorians gathered around the crystal, their faces impassive, their eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity. And he saw the professor, lying on the ground, his body lifeless. A wave of grief and rage washed over him. He charged into the chamber, his hunting knife raised high. The Eldorians turned to face him, their expressions unchanged. They raised their hands, and energy crackled around their fingers. Constantin knew that he couldn't defeat them all. He was just one man, armed with a knife. But he wouldn't back down. He would fight them to the death, for the sake of the professor, for the sake of humanity. He lunged forward, his knife aimed at the heart of the crystal. The Eldorians moved with impossible speed, deflecting his attack. They surrounded him, their energy crackling around him, threatening to overwhelm him. Constantin fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, his movements quick and deadly. He managed to wound several of the Eldorians, their pearl-like skin tearing under his knife. But they were too many. They closed in on him, their energy intensifying. He felt a searing pain course through his body, as if his very soul was being ripped apart. He screamed in agony, his voice echoing through the chamber. He fell to his knees, his body convulsing. He knew that he was dying. He knew that he had failed. He had tried to save the professor, but he had only doomed himself. But then, he remembered the professor's journal. He remembered the professor's research, the knowledge that he had accumulated over a lifetime. He remembered the warnings, the cautions, the secrets that the professor had uncovered. He realized that he wasn't powerless. He had the knowledge to stop the Eldorians, to close the door that the professor had opened. With a surge of adrenaline, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the map. He held it up to the light of the crystal, his fingers trembling. He knew that the map contained the key to Eldoria, the knowledge to control its power. He also knew that the map was a double-edged sword. It could grant unimaginable power, but it could also corrupt and destroy. He closed his eyes and focused his mind, channeling his energy into the map. He spoke the ancient words, the forgotten incantations, the secrets that the professor had entrusted to him. The map began to glow, its symbols pulsing with light. The energy in the chamber shifted, the power of the Eldorians wavering. They recoiled in fear, their faces contorted in pain. They knew that he had the power to destroy them. Constantin opened his eyes, his gaze burning with determination. He raised the map high above his head. "I command you," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I command you to return to the darkness. I command you to leave this world forever." The map pulsed with power, and a beam of light shot from it, striking the heart of the crystal. The crystal shattered, its ethereal light extinguishing. The chamber plunged into darkness. The energy of the Eldorians dissipated, their bodies dissolving into dust. The city of Eldoria began to crumble, its impossible architecture collapsing in on itself. The forest withered, its trees turning to ash. The river dried up, its silver water vanishing into the earth. Eldoria was dying, its existence erased from the fabric of reality. Constantin collapsed to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. He had saved the mortal world from a terrible fate. He looked at the professor's body, a deep sadness washing over him. He had failed to save him, but he had honored his memory by fulfilling his mission. He took the map and the journal, the burden of knowledge now his. He knew that he would have to carry this secret for the rest of his life, protecting humanity from the dangers of Eldoria. He found the portal, still shimmering faintly in the darkness. He took a deep breath and stepped through, leaving the ruins of Eldoria behind. He emerged back into the monastery, the fog still clinging to the crumbling walls. The mountain was silent, the whispers gone. He buried the professor on the mountain, marking his grave with a simple stone. He vowed to never forget him, to always remember the sacrifices he had made. He returned to his village, a changed man. He carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he also carried the hope for a better future. He knew that the darkness would always be there, lurking in the shadows. But he also knew that the light could always be found, even in the darkest of times. He would be the guardian of that light, protecting humanity from the horrors that lay beyond the veil. He would be the cartographer of the unknown, guiding others through the treacherous landscapes of the mind. He would be the keeper of the secret, ensuring that Eldoria remained forever lost. A whispered legend, a cautionary tale for all who dared to seek the forbidden knowledge. The ink of the Cartographer, forever stained with the blood and secrets of Eldoria. He was the only one who could bear its weight, and he would.